This is my ProcessWork 1, Leisa Brown, ENC1101. This is for our major paper 1 on literacy. I've put together sort of a timeline of my journey through literacy from my earliest memory to where I'm at today. For my definition of literacy, I'm still kind of working out the kinks on how I'd like to word that, but I will say that the concept is really around multiliteracies and language and communication, because I think that literacy is much more than just written and read text. All right, here we go. My first memory of literacy is actually not one of reading or writing necessarily, but it was of sign language. When I was 3, we went to a church where the preacher's daughter was deaf, and we would take classes every Wednesday night to be able to communicate with her best that we could. So at a very young age, I learned that it's up to the speaker to really have that responsibility for the listener or the receiver to understand what you're saying. I think a lot of times, especially today, we seem to put that responsibility on the receiver, and I just don't believe in that. This really taught me to connect with people and find ways to make sure that they are included, make sure that their literacy is positively affected by me. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about when my sister actually went to kindergarten. It seems like the event would be when I went to kindergarten, but honestly, she's 2 years older than me, and when she went to kindergarten, essentially so did I. My mom was the PTA president and the classroom mom, so she was at the school all the time, and so I would go with her. And so while I did not go to preschool, I pretty much went to kindergarten as a 3-year-old, and so I was learning the same things that they were learning. I was doing the same activities that they were doing, and so this was really the start of my formal education. Next is one of the programs that we used in kindergarten, both when my sister was in kindergarten and then when I was there as well, and it was called the Letter People. With the Letter People, each letter had sort of a theme, and so here I've illustrated the letter B, which was billions of buttons. I could probably tell you each of the letters. I still remember them to this day, because they went just all out in the classroom. It was amazing. So for billions of buttons, we walked in that day as, little 5-year-olds with buttons everywhere. They were on every desk, every surface you could imagine. They were all over the floor. I can't even imagine what cleanup was like. But we would use the buttons to trace out or to build the letter B. We use them for sounds. We use them for all kinds of things. And so this was really how I learned how to teach, to be honest, how to make learning fun, how to make reading fun. And to this day, this still sticks with both me and my sister. We're in our 30s now and could still tell you each of these letters. They were fantastic. Next on my timeline is actually church. When I was younger, we were really involved in the church, and we used to sing in front of the church, which I can't imagine doing today. But singing, you had to learn the lyrics, you had to listen repetitively, you had to learn the rhythm, and that rhythm really translates through, I think, not just to music and then obviously with poetry as well, but also it taught me how to read aloud, your tone, your cadence, and how important that is to communicate your message. Next is actually my best friend and I reading in a tree. This is what we did every single day, pretty much all through elementary and some of middle school. We'd climb up into a tree and just read for hours and hours. It is the first time I can recall reading chapter books, but also getting into a series and just reading book after book after book. And this is when I learned to connect with characters, to really buy into the story and see them as people, not just words on a page. And we really would use our imagination and sort of dive headfirst into these stories. My best friend was quite a literacy sponsor for me in encouraging me to read and really just being my partner in crime in using our imaginations. Next is actually all through middle school and high school, and this is where that connection with multiliteracies comes in. Oh, sorry for my finger in the screen there. This is where I started to do activities outside of the home and outside of church. I started to dance, I started to play volleyball, and I started to play lacrosse. And each of these had its own language. It had its own words. In dance, they were mostly French, and they were completely contextual. if you used any of those words outside of dance, it wouldn't make any sense to anyone else. Same with volleyball. If you said spike to somebody outside of volleyball practice, they'd think of a pointy object in the ground as opposed to hitting the ball over the net, which is what it meant to us. In lacrosse, same thing. These are all words that you would normally use in the English language, but they only made sense contextually at lacrosse practice. So this was really when I started to connect with context. And I was doing all of these events at the same time in my life, and so these were running concurrently, and I was able to switch, sort of turn one on and off, turn off dance and turn on volleyball and so on. So this was a huge tipping point for me as well to really grasp that concept. After high school, we sort of move into my adult life, where I'm now a parent and, teaching my children to become literate and teaching them how impactful stories are. We read bedtime stories, sing songs, and, that responsibility is now on me to connect literacy to my family. And last is where I'm at today in my career. I work in education, I work with students with disabilities, and so I now have to really think outside the box to find a way to communicate what it is that we need them to know and change that teaching style to fit the way that they think. And so, oh my gosh, talking about, communication and language and how important that is with literacy, a lot of times I'm not teaching them to sound out a word because they don't read that way. I'm teaching them sight words. And so I really plan to expand on that a lot in my formal writing as well. So that's it. Hopefully some of that made sense to you, and any feedbacks that you have would be great. Thank you so much.